Thank you so much for coming, everybody. We are so excited today to have Anita Hackley Lambert, and she is the author of F.H.M. Murray, which is the first biography of F.H.M. Murray, who was a civil rights leader, a local civil rights leader, and also the grandfather of Morris Murray, who is one of Alexandria Library's sit-in participants. Anita is very accomplished. She is an historian, a genealogist, a biography, and a business owner, and she has spent 10 years working on this title. If you would like to read it, we have bought a few copies from the library, so you can check it out here or buy a copy for yourself. So without further ado, Anita, if you're ready, I will turn it over to you.
Well, praise the Lord. And I am so grateful for everybody who has registered and joined this meeting. I have to give praise and glory to God because if it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't be here. And I have a long story relative to that, and that's for another time. I wanted to say thank you, Diana, for that introduction. Today, I am indebted to my sponsor, the Alexandria Library, and my co sponsor, the African American Hall of Fame. And I want to take this time to give a shout out to Mr. Robert Dawkins, who reached out to me and helped me get this program going. Also, I have to shout out to my associate and producer, Mr. Samuel A. Clark Jr. He helped me in doing a lot of things as far as the book is concerned and as far as getting to where we are today. So, gentlemen, thank you, and thank you. As an author and the great granddaughter of Freeman Henry Morris Murray, he's better known as F.H.M. Murray, and I am also a promise keeper. Now, when my book was published, I was able to fulfill two promises, one to my mother and one to my grandfather, that I would give an accurate account of his life and his legacy. My mother, I couldn't understand for a long time her zeal and her zest for all of the stories she kept telling me. Freeman Murray was the only grandfather I ever knew. And so every time she told stories on him, and he was larger than life, I would sit down and I would listen. And she would say, Grandpa did this, and Grandpa did that, and Grandpa this, and the story after story after story. And it was seldom the same story. And I'm thinking, wow, one man doing the work of three or four people. And she said, promise me that you will write his book. And so I said, Mama, I promise. And I guess she knew that I would do it because I just had this zeal like she did. Because when someone gives you an assignment and gives you a word, the way we were raised is that you always keep your word. So I knew I had to do that. But at the same time, I realized that most people are not going to want to hear my mama said, my mama told me, my mama did that. So I knew that I had an arduous task to try to find out information that I could prove these stories and so that people would know about him. And in doing that, I found out more about him myself that I didn't even know about. And I want to say that doing the research, and anyone who is a researcher, you have high points and low points. And I was amazed at the information that was available, even though it wasn't that easy to find, that more people hadn't written about him or talked about him. And one of the high points, I should say, probably the highest point in this entire thing for me was the day that I was sitting in the room and I was holding his diaries. And every time I even talk about it, I get emotional. So I'm going to try to keep myself together because that was just a magnificent time. It took me right back to the time when I was a little girl and he had just finished bouncing me on his lap and I was standing beside him and he reached up into his desk and he pulled out a handful of these little books and he opened them and he started writing in it. And for that moment, I was still with my grandfather. And that was such a wonderful time. And so the next part of what I'm going to tell you while I'm sitting in this room, I'm awestruck. Pick up one of the diaries and it has all this dust on it, ancient dust, I called it. And I brushed it off. And man, it went in my throat and I started choking and having one coughing fit. And while I was doing that, I felt this pressure right in my chest, and I knew that a spirit had entered me. Now, before you think I'm crazy, Okay, I didn't go off the deep end or anything. People who understand that there is a spirit world, people who understand that there are evil entities, there are angelic beings, and there are dead people. I used to see all of this as a young child before it all came together. So I was familiar with spirits. However, had anything like that ever happened to me before? No. It hasn't happened before, and I hope it doesn't happen again. But I was pleased with that presence that I had. Now, how did I know that it was my grandfather? Okay, well, you would have to know Grandpa Murray. He was, when he walked into a room, you could have all your candles on, all your flashlights on, any light that you put on in there. He would come in and it would just, the room would just light up even brighter. And we would have all this excitement and anticipation because he was just so full. We didn't know whether he had candy in his pockets or toys in his pockets or whether he had a script that he wanted us to play. But everyone, all of us would just gather around him. That's the kind of person he was, warm, loving. And that was the feeling that I had, that same feeling when I was a little kid. And so I was looking at the book and I'm still at awe, even though I feel his presence there. I'm looking at his writing and I'm thinking all the lines are straight and it's so beautiful. It's like calligraphy. Oh my goodness. And then at that precise moment, I felt the move inside, and one tear came out of my left eye. It was not my tear, it was his tear. And I felt that it as if he was looking through my eyes, reading the words that he had written so long ago. And that was such an amazing moment for me. And then he came out just like he went in and left me with this feeling that he was pleased with what I was doing. And so I don't mean to digress on that, but to me it's a very important part. And the second thing, revelation that happened that day, and I started reading his words, and I get down a little ways and I go, oh my goodness, I know exactly how he thinks. I know exactly how he feels. And if he put a topic there, I could almost think of what he was going to write. And I said, that's me. That's me. That's how I feel. That's how I think. And so the first time in my life, I connected to me. It explained why I was different from my siblings, why I always wanted to have my own business. And my brother, they were never anything like that. My mother had worked hard, purchased a trumpet for my brother because he begged for it. And money was scarce back then. Well, he didn't play it anytime. So I didn't want to break my mother's heart. I picked that trumpet up and I played it for 18 years. Then my brother didn't do his newspaper route. So wanting to have my own business, I picked up that wagon and I excelled in that. By the time I was 12, I had my own mail order business from home. So I realized that I had the DNA of my mother and my grandfather. And boy, am I grateful for that. Changed my life. So I'll get back to Freeman Murray. But that was a accumulation of putting me together and really connecting me to him. Freeman has a huge legacy, and he was a giant of a man. I'm not saying that because he was my great grandfather. I'm saying that because the evidence proves that he was that type of a person. He played many roles, he wore many hats, but he walked in his own shoes. And if I had two words to describe him, it would be unshakable and unstoppable. He had an unwavering character. That character made him vulnerable to his opponents. For instance, there was a time when they were trying to get him removed from his federal job, and he spoke out. And I quote, he said, these types of creatures come like thieves in the night. Their services can be purchased for a few coins. Should I apologize for defending my race? God forbid. I am a fighter and I will die fighting. F.H.M. Murray. Now, Freeman was the type of person who set his mind on something, and once his mind was on it, he stayed fast with it. He had was a man on a marvelous mission. His mission was twofold, and one was to honor his father's legacy, and that was to continue to fight for equal rights for colored people and to fight against the any laws that will restrict people from having the freedom that they're supposed to have and racial discrimination. The second fold part was that he was the only Murray. He had a brother who ran off when he was young, and so he had no other family to connect to. He vowed that he would reestablish the Murray bloodline and reinstate the birthright, which was stolen from him. So he went on through with his life, and he moved from Ohio to Alexandria, Virginia in 1883. Now, during that time, he became a citizen of the city of Alexandria. He lived in Alexandria for over 60 years, and yet he had gone largely unnoticed. As a prominent citizen, he contributed much to the community. He was a certified teacher and a tutor. He tutored his children, even though they went to public school. He wanted to make sure that they had even greater education, and he tutored others in the neighborhood. He was the first African American of Alexandria to speak 5 languages fluently. And he used his finances, partnered with other people who had finances, and incorporated a group such that other African Americans could purchase properties in Alexandria as well as save their money and not have to go outside of their own community. He was really devoted to his community. Um, he purchased 2 homes in Alexandria. Each of them come with their own history, but he added to that history. For example, he founded the post-Civil War Underground Railroad in Alexandria, Virginia, saved many lives from lynching and from other kind of abuses that were going on. And his wife, Delilah, was very much involved in that. She was a professional wig maker and a seamstress, and the story goes on is how she did the costumes, and the men were women and the women were men and what have you. But he continued on his life, and now the Underground Railroad was one of 2 of our family's best kept secrets. And the second best kept secret, well, it's still a secret, but I'm writing on that in the book that's coming up this year. And I hope that you all will follow that because I think you will like the story. It's exciting. At least I think that it's exciting. He was a lecturer and a playwright and a drama coach. He spoke at the Alexandria Opera House, at churches, and at other platforms. He held several positions on executive and social committees. He was very committed to the public school system. So he did all the things that he felt was necessary to try to improve the system, as well as he did a lot in trying to get the sewer system there because they had a lot of backup and things. So he worked for that. And I'm gonna slow down. I know I'm talking fast. Freeman.
Oh, Anita, can I
Yes.
interrupt you just a minute?
Sure.
We've had some
Mhm.
requests if you could turn on your camera so everyone could see you while you're chatting.
Oh, I didn't know my camera wasn't on. I'm sorry, everybody. Hi. I'm sorry. I apologize for all of that. Thank you very much for letting me know. Um, Freeman is credited by scholars and historians as the first Black art historian and author. And he did publish a book in 1916 entitled The Emancipation and the Freed in American Sculpture, a study and interpretation. That book is used largely throughout some of the major universities for authors as well as just historians for Black art. When they're talking about Black art, he is highly quoted for that. Um, wow, I'm just trying to think of so much. He founded the Alexander Home newspaper, of which he was a co-editor. He was a caretaker for the Douglas Cemetery, and he founded the Mary Brothers Printing Company in Alexandria. They ended up with 2 branches, but he had one in Alexandria, one in the District of Columbia. That company did not close until 1964, so that was open for decades. And I wanted to tell a story about the 3 Murray brothers. Uh, Shortly after, Mary's first wife, Laura, died, and also the daughter died, a young daughter died with her. He had the three boys and the daughter left. The daughter was Kathleen, my grandmother, and the three boys. They had become so, as boys do, rambunctious, I'll use that word for it. And the second oldest child, Morris, and he was called Little Morris because he was smaller than his other brothers. He had an active mind, and he watched so much of what his father did that he could not use idle time properly. He had to, his mind was such that he was a builder, he was a designer, he was all kinds of things going on. The wheels never stopped in his head. So one Christmas, Freeman gifted him with a printing press. It was a used printing press. And as the story goes, little Morris took it apart piece by piece, boat by boat. He cleaned it, he worked on it, he did whatever he could, he put it back together, and it worked perfectly. And he still was not satisfied with that because it only printed small items. So he took it apart again. He re engineered it so that it could print posters and thick paper, you name it, and business cards, stationery, all those kind of things. And so Alexandria ended up with the first Murray printing press. And I want to say that Morris, his older brother Raymond, and his younger brother Norman, these young boys were not even teenagers at the time that they did all of the things that they did. They went out through the neighborhood, door to door, and to businesses saying, give us a chance. We have a printing press. We want to do some printing for you. And they came back with, I understand, quite a number of jobs the first time that they went out, and they printed it, sent all the stuff back. And the story goes that the work kept coming in and the money kept coming in for it, and that eventually they were taking the work away from professional printers because they said the quality of their work was good and the turnaround time was impeccable. And so they went on with that. And I thought that was really, really cute when I found out that they weren't even teenagers at the time. And Freeman watched his children, is what they were doing. He allowed them to continue to do that for a few years. Then he incorporated the Murray Brothers Printing Company. And that is, to me, that is a that is a fabulous story. After the death of his wife, he did remarry, and he had another daughter and he had another son. So of the 6 children that he had, 5 of them went to college and graduated with degrees. One boy became a pharmacist. The other 3 became lawyers, and his daughter became a journalist. And 3 of them went to graduated from the Howard University. Freeman also took numerous courses at Howard University. And so he was a proponent for higher education. And that was really a great time for him to have his children to go. And all of this was going on at the time when he was still a full-time worker with the War Department in Washington, D.C. He made access from one property to the other property. And that's a part of the story of the Underground Railroad, where he dug this dry well. And I won't go into all of that right now, but there's so many things that he had to do while he continued his full-time employment. He was one of the first people from Alexandria to walk alongside such notable, walk along and work with such notables as William Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Kelly Miller, L.M. Hershaw, and the list will just go on. He was the editor and co-founder of the American Negro Academy. That lasted for a number of decades. He was the co-founder of the Niagara Movement, which was, many of you might know that, one of the first civil rights movement organization in the nation. He was a co-founder and co-editor of the Horizon magazine. He was co-editor of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And it didn't stop there, but by the time he's in with all of that, Jim Crow kicks in, the Jim Crow laws, with all of the restrictions, separate and not equal, was going on. And Mary took time to um, work on what he called his enlarged vision model. I call it a genius plan to circumvent Jim Crow laws. Matter of fact, I'm going to say that he was a genius only because people who are talented, they can hit a target that other people can't hit. But geniuses hit a target that we can't see. We can't see it because they think out of the box. They think larger than a lot of other people. So we can't really see all of the aspects of where a genius is. And so I'm going to call him a genius. And I want to say that the city of Alexandria, the city of Washington, D.C., uh, they can and they should be proud of Freeman Murray. He put his life on the line for his community, for his people, and he didn't think much of what he's trying to gain for himself. What he did was not for himself. It was for the betterment of the community, for the betterment of people, betterment of Black people. And so for that, I am entirely grateful. Um, what he did with his enlarged vision model, um, it's reported by the family that he wanted and desired most to do his enterprises in Alexandria, Virginia. But the Jim Crow laws were so strict, racism was so high that he was not going to do that. And yet he was familiar with DC because he worked there for a number of years. He took the enlarged vision model and what he called his business enterprise, which was a collaboration of all of the businesses that he started up, and they were in DC. He founded the place that he thought was best, which was the U Street corridor in Northwest DC. And during that time, he again used his finances and joined with another group of people so that the Black community there, they would be able to start new businesses or enhance the businesses that they had. Eventually, the U Street corridor had about 300 businesses. And so with the business enterprises that Mary had established, um, he was able to increase jobs, opportunities for people that normally would not be there. And these were skilled labor jobs. There were not a lot of skilled labor, colored Americans during that time who would be able to have a skilled labor. I'm sure he hired all the skilled ones that he could find. However, the ones that were not skilled, he hired them and provided the adequate training for them. The U Street corridor was a place where Jim Crow, the laws did not bother them there because they lived there, they worked there, they could go shopping there for food or clothes. They could bank there. Everything that they needed was right there. It was self-sufficient. And if that doesn't get past Jim Crow laws, you tell me what does. And people could come from anywhere and work there. They didn't have to live there. They could come anywhere and work there and walk among the people and be free. They had their own entertainment. It was so much involved in all of those things. And Murray Brothers did a lot of that. Now, I can say thank you to the District of Columbia because they did hold his building that his family and friends built from the ground up and put all of his businesses into that building called the Murray Building on U Street now. However, that's not enough. It's time for them to tell his story and let it be known. Also, I think I need to add that Freeman Murray, he was a man of principle and he based his life on truth. He taught his family on truth. He was a man who loved God and he loved his people. I would like to say, as far as truth is concerned, the reason that helped him to be uncompromising. If it was the truth, he didn't waver from it. He stood his ground and he stayed on it no matter what. The best way to define or explain him and his uncompromising attitude is with the poem written by Elizabeth Browning. She wrote, "Truth is fair. Shall we forgo it? Can we cite a right for wrong? Truth is large. Our aspirations can scarce embrace half we be. Shame to stand in his creation and doubt truth's sufficiency. Wow. I love that because it says so much about truth. In other words, it's a fact, it's undebatable, and it stands on its own. Now, Freeman Murray's life mattered back then, but it matters today. It matters today because he made his life count. He made his life count for you, for me, for other people. And we too today should make our lives count. And you can learn a lot from his story and apply his vision model to your life. It's one of the things that I live by. I learned from my mother, who learned from her mother, who learned from Freeman Murray. He said, the statement was, for this family, failure is never an option. Never give up, never give in, never, ever, ever, ever stop until you win. I apply that to my life, and I can tell you it works. Anything that you desire, that you want to do, if you work hard for it and keep your eyes focused on it, that you can do it and you will do it. And did I mess up? Sure. I messed up. Did I misspeak? Yes. And so what happened is that all of those things, they were learning blocks. There was not a failure. It was something that I could learn from, I could add to, or I could take away from it, but use it as a stepping stone. So I just want to encourage anybody that's watching, use that philosophy. Keep your eye on the prize. And if you believe you can get it. But just remember this, it doesn't always come in your time. It comes in God's time, and that's the only perfect time. And so be patient in it, and you can achieve your goals. So that's pretty much my introduction, but I'm going to continue the presentation. Mr. Samuel Clark Jr. and I have put together a small presentation of my book, F.H.M. Murray, First Biography of a Forgotten Pioneer for Civil Justice. I hope you enjoy it, and thank you. So, ready to share this now?
Okay. Thank you so much, Anita.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you.
Numerous Americans of biracial descent have made significant contributions to the American scene. Freeman Henry Morris Murray is one of these people. Freeman Murray was born on September 22, 1859, as the second child of John Murray and Mary Bentley. John was Scottish, and Mary was a mulatto of Irish, white American, and Native American ancestry. During this time period, the Murray Scottish clan strictly forbade biracial marriages. Although given a chance to redeem himself, John refused to disavow his bride. He and any descendants were permanently exiled and cut off from their Murray birthright, which dates back to 1235 AD. This status remains to this day. Freeman's father detested racism and slavery. His exile only strengthened his resolve to oppose slavery and make a difference for the future of his children. John Murray moved to Virginia to live with his wife Mary's family for a short time. Sometime in the 1850s he relocated with his wife to Cuyahoga County in Cleveland, Ohio, a then free state. There John befriended Freeman Henry Morris, a well-known Clevelander, and together they formed a lucrative and fruitful tailoring partnership. John paid tribute to their close friendship by naming his second child Freeman Henry Morris Murray. John became involved in the Ohio abolitionist movement and the Underground Railroad, which caused him to make the greatest sacrifice for the betterment of humanity. He left his family to join the Union Army during the Civil War. Freeman Murray, who was just 2 years old, and his brother, John Jr., who was 9 years old, were devastated when their mother, Mary Bentley Murray, died of cholera. John Murray Sr. died during the Battle of Bull Run in 1862. This made Freeman's grief even worse, as did that of his brother John Jr. As a result, Freeman and John Jr. were raised by their black housekeeper and nursemaid until she gave them to their maternal grandfather, Daniel Bentley. Daniel was now well known in Cincinnati, Ohio's Mount Healthy, formerly Mount Pleasant, neighborhood. He worked as a professional whitewasher during the day. By night, he labored as a conductor for the Underground Railroad, turning his home into a safe haven for escaped slaves. Young Freeman's life was forever altered by his observations of his grandfather's activities and those of his abolitionist friends, as well as the shocking sight of a lifeless, brutally beaten black man hanging from a tree as he and his maternal grandfather traveled the path in their horse-drawn wagon. Freeman became more determined and focused on his future when his brother left home in 1864 to work in the circus as a 12-year-old. He had no idea he would not see his brother again for 45 years. Although under the care of his grandfather, Freeman realized that as a Murray, he was on his own. He promised his father that he would put in a lot of effort to preserve the legacy for which he had lost his life, start a new Murray clan and fight for the civil rights of others. Is it possible that Freeman Henry Morris Murray was able to leave such a significant legacy for his family? We will now continue Freeman's life story for your investigation and conclusions from a review of the events in his life and his accomplishments from 1873 to his accidental auto-pedestrian death in 1950. An advance note: an examination of archived historical files reveals that he did. Freeman's grandfather, Daniel, had a significant impact on him. He became a man on a mission with a tenacious personality. He had developed a strong work ethic by this point and a passion for his colored American race that remained throughout his life. In 1875, Freeman received a teaching credential when he graduated from the academy in Mount Pleasant, Ohio. He then accepted a 5-year teaching position at a school for colored students in Covington, Kentucky. After teaching, he was employed by the Cincinnati Enquirer newspaper as an apprentice/newsman. Maintaining a clear focus, he got engaged to a Cincinnati resident, Laura E. Hamilton, whom he later married as his little Daisy. These were turning points in his life's plan. Freeman became the first colored American from Ohio to pass the civil service exam later that same year, and received a job offer with the U.S. War Department in Washington, D.C. Freeman's employment start date was on July 2, 1883. He and his wife Laura had to move out of Ohio in order to be closer to his workplace in Washington, D.C. He rented from a family friend named Eliza Claggett at 184 Duke Street in Alexandria, Virginia. He longed to have a house of his own. And by 1886, Freeman had purchased their first house in Alexandria, Virginia, a small white cottage at 409 North Alfred Street for which he had great plans. Freeman worked tirelessly to plant and grow a huge grape arbor, dug a deep brick wall-lined dry well, and added numerous additions to the cottage using the knowledge and skills he learned from his maternal grandfather. By 1892, Freeman and Laura were well on their way to rebuilding the Murray lineage with 5 children, 3 sons and 2 daughters. However, Freeman and Laura's excitement about starting a family were dashed when Laura became seriously ill following each birth. As she recovers, Freeman continued working at the War Department. There, he became an avid reader and enhanced his proofreading skills. As an advocate for self-education and home study, he earned a Virginia teaching certificate to homeschool his children and friends on weekends and some evenings. In addition, he studied biology and chemistry at Howard University. He never tired of learning and could read and write in 5 languages: Latin, Greek, German, French, and English. Along with his regular position in the government, Freeman was an active partner in the New Era Building Association and served as its secretary. In Alexandria, Virginia, the association was the first owned and operated by colored Americans to give customers control over all of their property purchases and improvements. Freeman was also a trustee of the Alexandria group of colored school systems in charge of filling positions that were created when former employees left the system. Alongside W.E.B. Du Bois and others, he also drafted and edited the document to establish the American Negro Academy, 1897 to 1924. The Academy's purpose was to provide scholarships and opportunities for Americans of color to participate in the arts, literature, and philosophy. As a young boy, when Freeman witnessed a man hanging from a tree, he may have felt an invisible rope around his own neck. As if that weren't enough, Freeman bravely and secretly established and operated an underground railroad system for a number of years. He alone came up with the brilliant plan for an underground railroad system in Alexandria, Virginia after the war. The majority of the construction of his networking system was secretly incorporated into his home renovations, which were connected via an underground tunnel. Much of the work was completed by Freeman alone. Fully aware that, if caught, he, his co-workers, and his entire family might become the next victims of the lynchers, the only option was secrecy. He stated, "The only way to keep a secret is to tell no one." That secret was never revealed until this book. This system enabled colored Americans, who required transportation, safety, and shelter, to escape the certainty of unjustified lynching and other brutalities. Despite the fact that Jim Crow laws were passed, Freeman's federal position was not negatively impacted until May 18, 1896, following the Supreme Court ruling in the Plessy v. Ferguson case. The purpose of enforcing these laws were to stifle and silence equal rights of colored Americans, and to limit their efforts to acquire property, wealth, education, and social acumen. The legal principle of separate but equal for people of color was laid out by the court. As a result of these laws, the majority of colored Americans in the United States experienced economic, educational, political, and social disadvantages in addition to second-class citizenship. Freeman's wife and his 7-year-old daughter Vivian contracted tuberculosis. Laura's cousin Delilah was hired as her washwoman to assist her and help with the children. After a brief period of recovery, Laura is reconfined to a bed before she and Vivian pass away in the summer of 1889. Delilah vows to remain and assist Freeman in the upbringing of his 3 sons and daughter, Kathleen. She is aware of Freeman's role as a father and provider for the children. In America at the time, this arrangement of a single female and an unmarried male living in the same house was against morality. Delilah, a professional seamstress and wig maker, turned her attention to raising the children in spite of community gossip and raised eyebrows regarding their live-in arrangement. Because of this, Freeman was able to continue working on a number of projects, including the 1901 establishment of Murray Brothers Printing Company and the Home News newspaper, both in Alexandria, Virginia. On September 1, 1898, Freeman and Delilah were married. In the same year, Freeman joined notable true reformers like W.E. B. Du Bois, William Monroe Trotter, L.M. Hershaw, J.R. Clifford, and anti-lynching advocate Ida B. Wells. Freeman and his group of true reformers from the 19th and 20th centuries, in contrast to Booker T. Washington, had distinct ideologies and approaches to the status of colored American communities in the United States. While education, racial solidarity, accommodation, and occupational wealth were all part of Washington's philosophy, he also advised colored Americans to temporarily accept discrimination and to elevate themselves through hard work. The true reformers, on the other hand, believed that colored Americans could only improve themselves if they had equal rights, in addition to education and financial success. Due to mutual and unwavering belief in equal rights for colored Americans, Freeman, along with W.E.B. Du Bois and 27 others co-founded the Niagara Movement in 1905 in Erie, Canada. In the United States, it was the first civil rights movement. A year later, in 1906, Harper's Ferry, West Virginia served as the venue for the second Niagara Movement gathering. Freeman was in charge of the planning committee. His children printed all of the programs and materials on the Murray Brothers printing press. And his wife Delilah helped plan the women's conference for which she was the spokesperson. Freeman co-founded and edited the magazine, Horizon, in 1907, along with W.E.B. Du Bois and L.M. Hershaw. This magazine's writings and articles supported the views of the Niagara Movement. Freeman also contributed to the magazine's In Look column about the black experience from the view of the black press. The magazine's business manager was F. Morris Murray, Freeman's son. While the Tuskegee Machine, Booker T. Washington, acquired and bought many of the black presses, the Murray Brothers Printing Company continued printing Horizon. Freeman stated that I could not be bought and would not be bought. Eventually, the Niagara Movement's efforts led to the formation of the NAACP. In 1910, F.H.M. Murray became a founding member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. Whether racial or external, Freeman never wavered in his determination to fight against the injustices he saw. For 4 years, he was a very active member. He was eventually hurt by the organization because of his uncompromising position. In a 1914 letter, Freeman wrote the following to William Monroe Trotter: "My suffering race, and I one of the sufferers. For years I have stood on the firing line, saying my say for the cause, as well as I could, in the open, while people who have not put the association's, NAACP, entire interest here have been careful not to get in a position to be hit by even a stray bullet, and notwithstanding their purported stand for the race has personally gone steadily up, while I have stayed on the bottom." Freeman never tired of his concern for truth, especially in regard to the inaccurate depiction of colored people in black art. He began the study and interpretation of black art as early as 1897 when he studied Muse's painting, The Adoration of the Magi. The painting's truth piqued his interest. He noticed that, in contrast to the errors in other renditions of the same artwork, Muse depicted one of the kings as a black Ethiopian. Freeman was always concerned about how black people were actually portrayed in all black art. He presented numerous lectures from his studies. It was during the 1913 summer school of the National Religious Training at Chautauqua in Durham, North Carolina, that Freeman used lantern slide projections to illustrate his collection of lectures and essays to the audience. Note, the lantern slide projection is an earlier version of overhead projectors, slide projectors, PowerPoint displays, and similar modern image presentation systems. In 1916, Freeman self-published his entire research on black art in the book Emancipation and the Freed in American Sculpture, a study in interpretation. It is the first book of its kind to feature photographs of black artwork, some of which have never been shown to the general public. The efforts that Freeman made to educate colored Americans about the ways in which they were portrayed and misrepresented in art were essential to comprehending who they really are. He believed in the infinite capacity and determination of black people to educate themselves. Freeman edited the book himself, and it was printed on the family presses. He designed the book's cover and hand-stitched it. Today and over the years, Freeman Murray is credited as the first black art historian by well-known national and international scholars. Historian and author Arthur Byam stated a black writer named Freeman Henry Morris Murray published one of the most remarkable and idiosyncratic texts of art criticism in the modern epoch. Byam also said that Freeman had a rare intelligence and was knowledgeable about artistic form, content, and the interaction between subject and object. For instance, Freeman posed inquiries such as what does it mean? What does it imply? Whoever sees it is likely to be influenced in some way. Freeman viewed emancipation not as a blessing per se but rather as a gradually unfolding opportunity. As a reminder, Freeman was daily Jim Crowed in and subjected to racial prejudice at the time he wrote the book. He was aware of the fact that colored Americans had been emancipated from slavery but not from the curse of race hatred and prejudice, as he put it. He also stated, what black folk really need, and should strive for, is the Caucasian opportunity. This fervent belief and assertion that you can become as big as you dream is supported by his numerous accomplishments. From 1917 to 1921, Freeman put in much effort to develop and successfully carry out his enlarged vision model that allowed him to acquire properties and establish family businesses in Washington, D.C. In 1920, while working, he injured his back and retired from the War Department. Freeman's thorough understanding of the business sector enabled him to increase the number of colored American-owned businesses in the United States. His strategy was to circumvent Jim Crow restrictions by increasing jobs while simultaneously lowering the unemployment rate for his race. As his enterprises offered huge opportunities in skilled labor categories, Freeman supported the unskilled and provided them with on-the-job training and opportunities for advancement. Freeman had the idea to circumvent the Jim Crow restrictions. Whether or not colored Americans were subjected to Jim Crow, the Murray enterprises on the U Street corridor of Washington, D.C., also referred to as the Shaw neighborhood, provided them with the freedoms, opportunities, and entertainment they deserved. He purchased 3 buildings in Washington, D.C., at 918, 919, and 920 U Street Northwest. The following family businesses were housed in the combined structures: the second location of Murray Brothers Printing Company, the law office of his son F. Morris Murray, and the well-liked Murray Palace Casino, which was a social and entertainment venue but did not permit or encourage gambling. Crescent Amusements Incorporated was established in accordance with family business tradition. Raymond, Freeman's son, owned and, with the support of family members, managed the Forrester, the Hiawatha, and the Dunbar, which were the first black-owned movie theaters. Suburban Gardens Amusement Park, which resembled a smaller version of the current Six Flags parks, was later added. With these infrastructures fully operational, colored Americans could express themselves freely for the first time in American history. Plus, they thrived in a community that met all their needs. Their rights were equal, adequate, and unhindered there. Live performances were given by well-known artists like Pro Bailey, Duke Ellington, and Cab Calloway. Even the poet Langston Hughes contributed to attracting crowds. The name Black Broadway came from the popularity of the neighborhood and credited to Pro Bailey. People thrived, and so did the neighborhood. In a sense, freedom ruled at the time. The U Street neighborhood was regarded as a city within a city. The Murray's successful businesses were not the result of greed. On the contrary, it was Freeman's strategy for demonstrating to his beloved race the ways to expand their vision and take advantage of emerging opportunities. His expanded vision model was available to anyone who wanted to use it. As an example, in the year 1924, Freeman sought out pop-up opportunities. He observed as the Washington Bee newspaper folded. He bought some equipment from the closing newspaper because he desired to start a newspaper again. He launched the Washington Tribune News. It gained a 50,000 circulation audience and was one of the most well-known colored American publications in the city. Freeman contributed to 2 of the newspaper columns, Cynic Says and Chips on the Quarry. After more than 40 years, the Washington Tribune went out of business and was sold to the Baltimore Afro-American newspaper in 1964. As a family retreat and vacation house, Freeman acquired the property at Highland Beach, Maryland from Frederick Douglass' son in 1925. It was located 2 doors up from the Frederick Douglass house. The property is still owned by the Murray family today. Throughout the Depression era, which lasted from 1929 to 1939, the Murray enterprises remained open. In point of fact, contracts awarded by the government to Murray Brothers printers actually led to an increase in the company's revenue. As other businesses laid off workers or closed their doors, the high demand for printed materials caused a hiring frenzy for the family presses. In his later years, Freeman's influence and philosophical teachings had a significant impact on the way his friends and family lived. One such instance is his grandson Morris L. Murray, who is recognized for his participation in the well-known 1939 sit-in demonstration at the white-only public library in Alexandria, Virginia. Morris later joined the military and became a secret agent for the Central Intelligence Agency. From 1941 to 1949, Freeman's daughter Florence Murray wrote editions of the Negro Handbook, which Freeman Murray proofread and co-edited. Even at the age of 90, Freeman continued to work tirelessly toward his goals and accomplishments. He commuted by train to his job as a lead proofreader for the Afro-American newspaper in Baltimore, Maryland, where he worked every week. Additionally, he was working on an Ethiopian manuscript. For numerous home projects, he mixed and poured concrete. On Sundays, he attended church and continued with his 1-hour Sunday evening walks until he was struck by a car. On February 20, 1950, Freeman Murray died from injuries he incurred following that incident. His death undoubtedly brought him peace and liberated him from the political bureaucracy, as well as the racial and national issues of his time. Freeman Murray set out on a mission to honor his father's legacy, rebuild a new Murray lineage, and to intervene and enhance the lives of his beloved black race. But did he accomplish that mission? You bet he did. Freeman Henry Morris Murray. What an extraordinary man! What a legacy!
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita. That was a
Thank you.
wonderful video. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you.
Are you ready to take questions? We do have a couple. And to everyone in the audience, if you have a question for Anita, if you could go ahead and put it in the Q&A, which should be at the bottom of your screen. So from Alexandria, do you know if Freeman worked in the building that is Ford's Theater while he was working for the Pension Records Division of the War Department, 1880s through 1893?
Absolutely. He was working there, and at the time, at one point, the second and third floors collapsed, and several people were injured, and some even lost their lives. He said he was standing about 4 feet away from that, and so therefore he was able to continue to go on doing the things that he did. But yes.
Thank you. Another question from Lisa. Thank you for this fascinating information. I've got a question about Freeman Murray's daughter, Florence. Was she one of the reporters who covered the library sit-in?
No, to my knowledge, she did not because during that time she was living in New York. She was a reporter for The Voice and many other, several other of the newspapers that were there in New York. So she was not here.
And from Adrian, we have, wow, thank you. Are you pictured in that family photo shown at the end of the film?
I absolutely am. I am the child sitting on FHM Murray's lap. Matter of fact, my mother's in there, my brothers and aunts and what have you, grandmother. Yeah, but yes.
And from Jeffrey, you mentioned Freeman kept diaries. Where are these diaries today?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have them, although I wish that I could, but were gifted by Florence Murray to the Howard Howard Library and Archives.
Thank you. And from Audrey, can you tell us more about the connection with W.E.B. Du Bois? And how can we see the video again? I think for the second part, this program will be recorded and be on Alexandria Library's YouTube channel. And I know Anita mentioned she's working on an updated video, and we hope to be able to share that one with you as well.
Yes, and would you repeat the first part of that question?
Sure. Can you tell us more about the connection with W.E.B. Du Bois?
Ah, yes. Well, that was a tremendous connection. They worked quite well together initially in the beginning because they seemed to have like minds. And So at some point in time, I think the wasn't a separation, but the disagreement came when the establishment of the NAACP came because they started including a lot of other issues other than what they had set out to do. And so he was not a part of that, but they were pretty close friends. And L.M. Hershaw, they all worked very, very close together.
Thank you. From Tiffany, in your book, you describe the house on Alfred Street as having false walls to facilitate the Underground Railroad. You also describe a well that was connected to the sewers to take people down to the river to escape. Did you ever see these false walls in the tunnel?
Well, yes and no. Yes, to the false wall. My brother and I found it because we were just curious little children and we were playing hide and seek. So we were able to find the wall that was in the house, and that's in the book. I'm not going to disclose everything about it, but yes. And as far as the tunnel is concerned, that was confirmed by my little brother, also by my older brother, because he actually went through the tunnel and went all the way through. He said he came out at the water at Washington Street. So yes, and there were just rooms also in his other house as well.
And from Adrian, this is incredible. Have you found interactions or writings between journalists like Ida B. Wells, Bishop Breverty, Ransom, William Monroe Trotter, or John Mitchell Jr.?
Well, the correspondence that I have found, William Monroe Trotter, yes. Ida B. Wells, I have not found any correspondence between them, but the family thing is that he and Ida B. Wells were connected very much as far as the anti-lynching part is concerned. And I can imagine that they would not have correspondence that we would get if you want to have the secret, because if you write it down and different things, that information can be found at some point. But I don't have any direct information pertaining to that.
Thank you. From Charles, do you know when Freeman Murray moved to into Washington, D.C., and where did he live there?
Well, he didn't ever live in Washington, D.C. He lived in Cleveland. He was born in Cleveland, moved to Mount Healthy, Ohio, left there, came to Alexandria, Virginia in 1883, and he commuted across the river from Alexandria every day into D.C. to work at the War Department.
We have another question. Did you say he was also the caretaker of the Frederick Douglass Cemetery here?
Yes, yes. He was good friends with Frederick Douglass. He admired him and what he stood for. And after he died, he became a caretaker of that property. Yes.
Adrian asks, considering his anti-lynching work, particularly as an Alexandria resident in 1897 and 1899, did you find references in his papers about the local racial terror lynchings?
Yes, he kept a record in his diaries for a number of years of the number of people who were lynched. And he had a protest, written articles in the newspaper about two of the lynchings that went on. And yet he was opposed to all of that. Yes.
And from P. Antoinette, is the house on Alfred Street still standing?
Oh, that breaks my heart. Apps is not there. Actually, the one on Alpha Street and the one on Princess Street. The one on Princess Street, they're all torn down now, and they're just parking lots. And I tell you, they need markers there for that. There was a lot of activity that went on at 813 Princess Street. I'm not going to go into all of that. Some of that is in the book. Some of it is going to be in my revised edition because I have additional information. But there's a lot of information out there, and I think it's very exciting. And I'm digging it up.
Another question. Sorry, Mary, missed your question for a minute. Could you provide more information on the Underground Railroad locations in Alexandria?
Well, he had two houses. One was across the street from the other. One was at 409 or 405 North Alfred Street, and across from that was Princess Street, and it was like a corner, and 813 Princess Street. So, and he had dug a dry well at the Alfred Street property. As children, we were told, don't go near that well. It's very dangerous. They didn't want anybody to fall in. And we were told that there was water in the well, but my brother and I were just throwing rocks and stones down there, but we never could hear anything splashing or anything like that. But those properties were connected by that well that went under Princess Street and came up into the basement of the Princess Street property.
An anonymous question. Are his papers on the lynchings available to read?
What I have is in his book, is in the book that I wrote. And so no, they're not available. But at my age right now, at some point, my documents will go to a museum or a library somewhere.
Thank you. And I have a question for those interested. If they don't have your book already, how can they purchase a copy?
Well, one way you can purchase the copy is if you want a signature copy, I do have some copies, and you can contact me. I will, my email, I can give that now. Is that okay?
Sure. I can go ahead and put it in the chat if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be
Great.
great. That is A.L. Murray 023 at gmail.com. Yes.
Everyone, that one is in the chat if you'd like to reach out to Anita to get a signed copy of her book, or if you have further questions. So we have about 1 minute. We have 2 more questions. I think we can get through these, and then
Okay.
we'll go ahead and wrap up. Oop, we're good. Sorry, just swallowed a
Ooh.
fly.
Okay.
Bad timing for that fly. From Adrian, this great man is, oh, I'm so sorry, is an icon of justice and liberation. How has the ACRP attempted to incorporate his life and writings into the community work?
I'm not sure about that question.
Is ACRP, if someone could clarify?
Yes, please.
The ACRP is the Alexandria Community Remembrance Project. And so that is a group that recognizes the 2 lynchings that occurred in Alexandria.
Okay.
And I will say, as a member of that committee, we recently were introduced to Anita last month, so that you can appreciate our enthusiasm about the wealth of information and knowledge that she has. We are sponsoring this program less than 30 days later. We intend to work with Anita where ACRP is concerned, where the library's 1939 sit-in is concerned. And so we are very happy to have made her acquaintance. And I think that's a great question. And moving forward, we will make sure that Anita is a part of the work that we're doing with ACRP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I think one last question. Oh, I still have that fly in my throat. Are there any family members buried at Douglas Memorial Cemetery? I think that's the question that Alexandria is working on restoring now.
Well, actually, I have identified two. One is Freeman's brother, John M. Murray Jr., and one of his sons, I believe it's Norman, that's Norman D. Murray that's there. There are a number of Lucketts that are there, and that's my mother's family that's there. Yeah.
All right, we're a little past 2 o'clock, so thank you so much, Anita. Sorry, I think everyone should be able to see Anita's email in the chat now. So if you would like a signed copy of her book, or if you have any further questions, would it be okay if they reached out to you via email as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. And again, I want to say thank everyone for being here, and thank you for your questions. Very good questions. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I also wanted to give you a save the date. Alexandria Library will be having our Black Family Reunion program on April 29th. Near the Barrett Branch Library outside. We have lots of wonderful things planned, and we're going to hopefully have this event be a time where we can collect some more local history of the Black community in Alexandria. So please put that on your calendar and stay tuned. And thank you so much, Anita.
Timeline for the Black Family event?
It's going to be on April 29th.
Yes, but is that all day? Any specific timeline?
Oh gosh, I think it's mostly all day. I would say
most of the events are scheduled from 11 to 3.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rose. So
Okay.
hopefully we'll be able to see some of you there. And again, thank you so much, Anita, for sharing today about your wonderful book. Please be sure to get a copy or check one out from Alexandria Library. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yes, God bless all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anita. You were wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.